my friend Sherry McGibbon and I, both who were members of city council at one point in time, ran into each other, and we both said, it's time to do something about older gays and lesbians. So let's get moving. With that, we both brought together a few friends that we had to take a look at what was going on. We had already decided that we were going to focus on both the services, programs, and housing for seniors, whether they were how older gays and lesbians fit into this framework that already was in existence, kind of thing. And that, so that was kind of a bit of our starting point. So before I go further in about the organization, I do want to help all of us to realize that we're all on a journey. And although we all know that, we probably are used to thinking more about the beginning of the journey and where we are, and not very often that the journey has an end point as well. And that end point is the part that most of us are now engaged in. We're part of the end of the journey. And I think that what we see as significant, and what I personally see as significant, is that we all take a little time to think about the kinds of experiences we've had and how that has shaped who we are. Because we also know that as people get older and enter in their later years, they bring that with them. They have been shaped by experiences that make them who they are. And I would use as an example for myself, thinking about the HIV/AIDS kind of thing. And I would say that anyone on here today has lived through that period of time, if you are at all older, when HIV/AIDS in fact took over, and particularly with gay men, but it spread beyond that. And it was a time when what came together, and very difficult for most of us, is the fact that we were gay and we were discriminated against. We were dealing with death, which most of us are not wishing to do, and particularly when we were in the 30 years old, for many of us in that age range. And we were also dealing with a disease that was fatal, kind of thing. In that it was a very unique period. It was a pandemic for us that I think was very much shaping. I would relate that in a personal experience that in working with the AIDS Network of Edmonton, I had a call from a friend about another friend of mine who I knew quite well, who was in the hospital, which I was quite surprised. I hadn't realized this individual was sick at all. So probably on a Thursday, right after I heard this, I went to the hospital to visit this individual, this friend of mine. And as I was going into the room, it was apparent that lunch was sitting outside because no one would bring it into the room. So I brought in the lunch, and my friend ate a little of it. He was, not well and wasn't very interested in the food, but ate a little. And we talked and had a conversation and reminisced a little bit. And then I left. And the next day, Friday, I went back to visit, and I took an article that I knew he would be interested in. We'd both be interested in, and we chatted. He was quite lively. We went through the article. I read part of it to him. We discussed some of the things that were there, and we reminisced about some times that I won't share, that you don't need to know, between he and I over the years. And then I did a little cleaning of his room because staff were reluctant to clean in his room as well. So I did a few of those things and then left. The next day, Saturday, then late morning, I went, and it was a beautiful sunny day. Before I even entered his room, I could see the light from his window coming out into the hallway. It was that kind of a day. I walked into his room, and there was no one there. And I was startled and thought, well, is he some testing, or has they moved him somewhere else in the hospital? And as I was stepping out of the room, one of the staff grabbed me and said, "Oh, we tried to catch you before you went in. He died last night, during the night." And I can't tell you how shocked I was. I knew everyone would die. I mean, that was apparent. But the impact it had, that I was just, I still can hardly talk about it, because it's such a, even now, it really resonates with me. And I realize that's part of who I am, and part of what I bring forward as I move into becoming a little older, kind of thing in that. And that I think it's been one of the things that has shaped my life in a variety of ways. So I wanted to kind of give that context to the work that we're doing with this group. And I'll move back into a bit more about what it is that we're up to. So when we got together at that first meeting and thereafter, we talked about services and programs and housing, et cetera. We realized that we didn't know what was going on. So we then embarked on finding out what was happening across the country and in the US. And lo and behold, we found that there was practically nothing for gays and lesbians across the country. The only place that was anything similar happening was in Ottawa. Had a group, someone like ours, who'd been around for over a year. And we did contact them and talk to them and got some information from them. Remember, this was the days of only telephone, and this was before electronics. So all of this moved along a little slowly, and discussed with them actually that they were going to send one of their people out to us, to our group, to meet and talk. That didn't happen. In between time, the funding that they had been receiving got taken away, and they essentially disappeared for a period of a year. They've come back in a little different way, but that was the only group of any kind that was doing something around gays and lesbians in Canada. In the US, the one major group we found was a group called SAGE, not the one here in town, I'm talking about New York City. And they were a big outfit. They had a library. They had produced a lot of materials. They were working with individuals and groups that had offices in other parts of the city of New York. They were a really going concern, and we learned a great deal from them as well. After we kind of figured out this a little bit, there wasn't much, and we got some stuff from New York that was helpful. We said we need to find out about Edmontonians, kind of thing, about who are part of our community. So we got some money from the city and we did a survey, and we had about 130 responses to that from people who are gay and lesbian in Edmonton. And what the survey pointed out in terms of some of the things that people thought were important, and the kind of qualities that they thought were needed to make services, programs, and housing unique to them, that would fulfill what they wanted, was they wanted them to be part of a community of people with similar interests. They wanted to be connected with people, both gay and non-gay. They were quite clear on that as well, what some of us may call friends and allies. They wanted to be seen and to feel welcomed. They wanted to be respected. They wanted to feel that they were in the place that people wanted them to be, and they wanted people to see them with a sense of dignity. They also wanted access to amenities like transportation. They wanted to be able to make decisions about themselves that would be important. And they also insisted or said many times that programs and services and housing needed to be safe and inclusive. And one of the challenges was, if they aren't safe and inclusive, that allows discrimination and bullying, and that's a challenge that is most difficult and people don't want to deal with again. They also recognize they would need to be out again, coming out to doctors, staff, et cetera, and that can be not easy sometimes. They're also concerned if the organizations or the groups had a religious base. Sometimes they can be pretty discriminatory and can have some pretty negative preach or stuff about people who are gay and lesbian, and got back to the discrimination, and I will quote from one of the persons said, "Discrimination hinders coming out, and coming out hinders discrimination." And so there was a real sense of trying to walk that line, knowing there's two sides to that. Health was the other one that they also brought up, of course, about how their health might change. I've put on this slide our website so you can look at further details. These reports are on our website. And I go to the next slide, please. We also then had a symposium where we brought people together, many from our little group, and then others that were involved in organizations, to look at the findings, what people said, and what is it that we would do as this organization, Edmonton Pride Senior Group. And we decided that our first effort would be developing a PowerPoint and doing presentations with programs and centers and housing that already existed about gays and lesbians, what they needed to know, what kind of background and experiences we had that we would bring, what would be appropriate for us. And when we did a couple of PowerPoint presentations, or they put together, and we in fact went and spoke at times to boards of directors, to staff, and sometimes it was to clients that were there. And each time we would, change the presentation a bit to fit the audience that we had. All of those experiences also led us to the next thing we did. In the next slide, please. So we recognized that we had the need to advocate, that what we had learned and what we were hearing said, it's a big world out there in Edmonton and Alberta, and we need to be advocating about older gays and lesbians and what's happening. So we attended a number of conferences that were provincial, where it was bringing together people from organizations and groups, and talked about what we knew, and talked about how they needed to ensure that what they were doing was appropriate and sensitive to the needs of persons who were gay and lesbian, from the larger community. We also advocated with politicians and senior officials about our concerns and what needed to change. We did have some impact on policies. In some of the provincial policies on both home care and long-term care, what was written into policies was that training for staff needed to include about gays and lesbians, et cetera. Some other policy kinds of things that changed. I have to say that was quite successful with the previous government. Let's just say that not much has occurred since the government has changed with the current government. But some of those policies are still in place because they were written in and they haven't been changed on that. So that was another avenue that we took, is looking at how we could make systemic changes over the longer term. And we did a lot of that work. Many of us as a group, 2 or 3 of us, meeting with different officials and different government departments. Next, please. Yes. So that brings us to a bit more where we are currently. And really, I think probably starting in 2017-18, we had done a number of things, but the issue around a residence and a place to live really kept coming back that somebody needed to look at that. So we again received some money from the city, and did a second survey that was looking specifically at residents, and what that would mean. We did have nearly 200 responses. I think we had 199. We had 200 responses, kind of thing that from people. Some of you who are here were part of answering that as well. And our surveys were always careful, but there's no directory of gays and lesbians in the city. So it was us getting friends and other people we knew to fill in the information and bring it back to us. It had a lot of information that we have found to be particularly informative, that we were able then to do some work on. So some of what we heard, some of it was similar to the first, but we had quite a few people responded who were couples, and they wanted to be clear that as couples that they would be still affectionate, they'd still be loving with each other, and that would be part of who they were in a residence, and that need to be understood. People also talked about or wrote about that they wanted social activities that were appealing to older gays and lesbians, books, films, activities, maybe the members of the court performing, taking part in public events that were aimed at gays and lesbians, specifically like some of the Pride events we've had in past years. That would be important for them. People were also very clear that there would be strong, specific policies against discrimination. That if you were discriminated against or bullied, there was no place for that, and there was a remedy for dealing with people who, in fact, were discriminated. That policy had to be very clear, and all staff needed to be trained that would work at a residence like this. It needed to be part of the documents that were provided to prospective people who wished to move there, that they were clear that we had a policy on this, and it was not that would not be allowed, and that was spelled out specifically. So with what we heard, read, and going through that and talking about it among our group, we moved to again, we got some money from the city to develop a prospectus, a document which you can also look at that describes who we are, what are the challenges, what is it we wish to achieve with the residents, how much would it cost, how many people would be there, what would it cost to build it, to run it, and where it would be located, the preference for location, that it would be specifically for LGBTQ2S plus allies, kind of thing in that. And probably as important, about 50 people indicated that over a 4 to 6 or 7 year period, they would seriously consider moving into a residence like that, which really set us moving, because there was something for us to base the decision to try to move ahead with land and the residence. I would, truthfully, it's been a huge task and a big challenge, that we did develop partnerships, and we're still in that process of completing that. One of them with Sage Edmonton, which has been our home ever since we started, who would be interested in programming. The other group, though, is the Garnell United Assisted Living Place. They're a nonprofit organization, or they're actually a company. They have a charitable status, and they run Ashburn Senior Living Center, which is Ashburn is right close to the University Hospital, where they have 100 units. They're the only, I think, in the country, the only senior residence that is affirming. And they've been that all the way through in their literature, the training, et cetera, and that. And they are, would agree to be part of assisting with this moving forward, that they would own the land if we've got land, that they would likely own the building as well, if we were able to do a building, to build a building. None of this has been, talking and working at this has been fine. And I think our prospectus and what we've done is really excellent. But actually getting land and building is still in the distance. Let me put it that way. We have recently instituted a smaller group within our group to look at raising money that we might be able to partly purchase some land. There's the opportunity, I think, to look at whether there are developers in Garneau in the downtown area or around McEwen that are thinking about building, that we might be a portion of something that they would build, or kind of an annex or whatever, that they would take on something like that. Any land in Oliver, all available land in Oliver is the most expensive in the city these days, which isn't helpful here. The downtown is not much better. It's a little cheaper around McEwen, but in Oliver, much of the land is already tied up by developers as well. So there are a lot of issues to try to get land, and that certainly is a big piece. We've been working with CMHC, who provides mortgages for many groups and people, and they've been very helpful. We fit the guidelines as a marginalized group. We're one of the listed as a marginalized group, and also seniors is one of their priorities. So we fit with some of that. That would be a very significant partner in terms of actual money for as a mortgage to build the building. So that's kind of currently where we're at. And so if we go to the next slide, that takes us back to what I said earlier on, in that I think from my perspective, we are interested in this journey today is having you think a little bit about what has shaped who you are as you move through this journey and start to realize you're probably moving towards the final part of the journey. What do you think about in terms of death and dying and what that means, and how you expect and what you expect in that process? And also to recognize that when you've reached the age that you have now as an older person, you have built and developed a huge reservoir of capability for handling the kind of obstacles and the kinds of things that we have faced through as we've grown older. And you bring that as the strength and the gifts to this kind of project. And more importantly, you bring that to the next generation. The next generation sees, here are people who are older, they've managed, they're doing well, they're in a place that works well. I can be like that too, even though I'm 30 now, when I become 75. And I don't think you can ever underestimate how valuable that is for other people like ourselves in our community as they grow older, to see that face and how we're able to move forward. So with the next slide, I want to thank you for listening to the presentation. Looking forward to questions and answers or comments that you might have. And in doing that, we'll get rid of the PowerPoint. I'll turn it back, and Larry will help me with any written questions people may have put in the probably the chat box, or if you have questions or comments that you can just flip your hand up or let us know one way or the other, and we'll see what we are maybe able to provide. So we will see. Larry, do you have anybody?
I don't have any questions from the chat box. I do have a question for you. You've had a distinguished career that has had massive influence in Edmonton, not only on the GLBTQ2S plus community, but also on the larger community. Can you tell me in what you think being gay, what advantages that gave you in the larger community and what obstacles you encountered?
Well, it's probably always a little easier to talk about some of the obstacles, kind of thing, because of course, like most all of you here, you could be discriminated against, and that meant in terms of employment or housing or services. And I started my career as teaching 5-year-olds and 4-year-olds, where everyone thought that somebody like me who was gay, was there to, it was a child molester kind of thing, and the worst possible things around. And the obstacles, that kind of sensibility really drove me to be extremely careful about letting people know that I was gay and lesbian. It took some other things for that to happen. We also, of course, in Edmonton went through the bath raids, where 50-some people had criminal records because they were in a bathhouse that was raided by the police, kind of thing. That I lived through it. One of the things that still angers me hugely. I was on council with Mayor Smith for 9 years, and he wouldn't proclaim gay pride. It was taken to the Human Rights Commission, who indicated that he needed to do that. And instead of just kind of doing that, he wrote this media thing about how he didn't agree, and it was that he didn't think this was appropriate to do for the folks, and that, but he would because they had to. He knew me. I worked with him all those years. I knew lots of other gays and lesbians. I can't tell you how hurt I was that he wrote and said that about folks like us. I will never forgive him for that. It was horrible. However, there are other things that were positive as well. I have always felt being recharged as I spent time with people in the gay and lesbian community. It's always been a place where I go back and just feel that kind of energy and that kind of goodwill and the kind of acceptance and all of that's there. And I think that's part of what we're hoping if we build a residence that has that kind of feel to it. My days in city council, I won some, I lost some, but certainly that was encouraging. And certainly most members of city council, almost all, and mayors with the exception of, although I got along with Smith on a day-to-day basis, but a lot of the city administration were very supportive and were very helpful to me as a politician, kind of thing too, which was that. I must say that the general public that I dealt with area that I won 5 elections, kind of thing, that, and there was always other choices. And maybe people should have made other choices, but I got back in, kind of thing. That so I bring some of that kind of thing that too. So, and people knew that I was gay. I mean, after a while, not everybody. I mean, but most people would have known. So thanks for that. There was a question, I think, or two in the box.
There are questions in the box. Yeah. The first is. Jan asks whether there are other cities in Canada that have already accomplished what Edmonton Pride Seniors Group is trying to do.
Not directly. Ottawa has a system that they've put in place in their new group, which is not that new anymore. Where they've rented some units in places. Toronto does a little of that, but it's a city. Toronto doesn't have an organization quite like ours either, and that I'm a little surprised at as well. And there have been rumors of a group trying to form in Vancouver. I don't think that's happened. And I don't think it's really happened in Calgary. Calgary's talked about it numerous times, but I don't think they actually have a group that's functioning in that. So I think we're probably further ahead than any other city that I'm aware of, or our group. I mean, I don't think anybody else in our group has found any other place either.
I'm not aware of any. Roy asks whether there would be an age requirement to move in.
Well, that's a good question. I think it'd likely be something about 60, 65, or some other condition that would require it. But it would also need to take into account that you may have a partner that is younger, and so that making that all possible. I mean, some of us dream of that younger partner, but some actually have the younger partner kind of thing in that. So we'd want to make sure that we were, accommodating that for both men and women. Of course, I didn't mention, and I should have, that the first survey we did, that of the 130, was almost 50% women, 50% men that responded to that. We also had a very small representation from trans and from Indigenous, but they were very small. But we had a significant number of women who I assume were lesbians. But I know that these days one needs to be careful.
One should not make assumptions.
Exactly.
But after that editorializing, Roy has a couple. I believe the question about rental versus purchase has been answered, and it is a rental property that they're considering. Yeah. Roy also asks about transportation for outings and so on. Is that part of what is being thought about for this idea?
I think only a little bit. Certainly, the response from people is they wanted to be where there was good transportation, either LRT, taxis, buses, whatever, and that. And I think that would that clearly is in our thinking and where we're looking for places as well. If we were one of the benefits of working with a place like Ashburn is they do some of that. They already work in that area, and that would help us to figure out how to do that best as well in a new facility as well. They bring that kind of capability, kind of thing, and that understanding. It would also have some parking spaces, although what we have learned is that as people get older, there are fewer and fewer people that drive. I just talked to somebody who many of you would know, who just turned a significant age and said that they stopped driving, period, and that's it, kind of thing in that. So many of us will not have a vehicle eventually. Any other?
There are two questions from Sydney. They, in a sense, fit together. Firstly, she's asking very specifically about women's rights fitting into the strategy that you've discussed, and then more broadly, her question is, what do you experience as the shared values of the committee?
I would say that one of the things that I think it has been helpful is that right from the beginning, it was Sherry McKibben and I. Many of you will know Sherry, and then Sherry died, I guess, nearly 10 years ago now, suddenly. But we've been fortunate to have what I would call, very interested women who have taken part in all of these discussions and the work that we're doing. I think that it will continue to be. In addition, in our work in some partnerships, Ashburn, the key person is the executive director, who's a woman, and in Sage, the key person is a woman as well. I think all of that will help to ensure that influences that we what moves forward embraces the diversity of both men and women, but also other diversities in what we're doing. As with all organizations, there's a lot of variety of opinions and backgrounds that people come from. I would say that in Edmonton Pride Senior Group, we've been fortunate that we have worked pretty well as a group. And when people think that we need to be doing something more, people bring it forward, and I think we've been fairly responsive to go at it. At some times we've had to say maybe not that one yet, or maybe hold off a bit on that. I think that the group are great volunteers, because we do a lot. When we talk about presentations, many of us have done presentations, all as volunteers, and all of the stuff that we've done has been as volunteers. All the grants we've made with all volunteers, and almost everyone in Pride Center have taken a role at different times doing these things, and that too. So even though there's a variety of opinion and direction, and that, I think that makes us a richer organization. People are also very committed and do a lot of work. I mean, actual day-to-day stuff that need to get done, kind of thing, and that too, because we have no staff. We've never had any staff. We've done all the work through contracts. The survey that we did, we hired someone to put that survey together, a contract with that. And we've contracted somebody else to help do the PowerPoint that we eventually ended up with. So we have no staff. So we have to do everything. And I think that typifies our group, and who have been willing to do that and to bring their experiences to the group. I think that's the other part that's valuable, kind of thing. Just as I bring some of my experiences, everybody brings some of their own, and that. And sometimes
Michael, can you see there are some questions coming from attendees? Can you see those people, or do you want me to direct you to them?
In the chat box? No.
No, they're not in the chat box. From the others, I have John De Lima, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your surname. Did you have a question or comment, John?
Oh, John. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Michael. I just moved here from the West Coast, so this is brand new to me out in Vancouver. They may have talked about this kind of project, but they're nowhere near. But my question to you is, you had mentioned earlier that you're looking for land and sponsors and commitments. What kind of time frame are you looking at to make this a vision?
Well, I think if we were fortunate in the land and the building, we're still, I think, 3 to 5 years away. I mean, it takes a while to get out the plan, build, open, and that. And I would say at this point, probably 5 years, because we don't have land yet, kind of thing, and that, because everything else depends on having land. You can't build something in the air, kind of thing, or something that will a location that. So that's what I think my best guess is at this point. And some days I'm a little discouraged that it'll be a little longer, but I won't be around for it. But be that as it may.
Thank you.
And thanks for the question, and I'm glad to not glad. I'm glad you knew something or that Yeah, in Vancouver, because I know that we'd heard rumors of something, but never been able to identify anything there too. So thanks for that. Yeah,
There
Larry.
is a question about whether there would be medical staff or a facility on site. I think the answer to that is not necessarily. There certainly would be nursing personnel of some sort, which is a standard part of senior area. I would like to return to the question about women's rights that Sydney initially asked, because I'm aware that we have female members of our committee, and I'm wondering whether anyone there any of the women wish, or who are here, wish to make any further comments on the response that Michael gave. If you do not, I'll.
Yeah, Sydney, do you want to add anything?
I do think that there are issues for gay women that are slightly different than issues for gay men. And I think sometimes as a committee, we discuss this, but I do have a feeling if we embedded something in our overarching values, that would be a positive step. I also think the issue of individual rights, when we think about couples and their rights as we all get older, is an issue that, in the future that we will probably embed in a value statement or a mission statement. Yep. So I was asking you, your experience is so vast, Michael, that I think that part of what, as a committee, we need to do is sort of entrench all those things that we believe and have learned. And I think the website is wonderful. And probably it's time to maybe look at it and make sure that some of these things are there.
Yeah.
Even if the housing isn't there before we are all gone. I like the idea that the values might be there before we're all gone.
Thanks. A great suggestion. And I think we can certainly do that. We get at it a bit. Thea, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. And thank you for all of you for participating in this. This is a great relaunch, and Larry and Jan and Dawn and Kim, I think you've done a great job. This is a wonderful group of people to see. And Sydney, you obviously noticed this as well. We're a little short on the female contingent, but I think with Jan and Joan and Sid and me and Dawn, maybe we can pull some other women to this forum going forward. I think that Michael's kind of nailed it, that we're at a crossroads. We need an address, whether it's a bunch of dirt in an empty lot or an old building that is viable for repurposing. And until we get that address, I think that our project is just going to be a dream. As soon as we get the address, I think we really can capture and corral just a ton of energy and money. So, we've made some strides. I think I share with you, Michael, that some days attainment of this actual physical residence seems like a distant goal to pursue. And some days it actually feels tangible that we've got some momentum going, I think. So, we're building a network, and I think the folk on this screen are a part of the 2021 additions to that network. So I would like to say to all of you that are here, we have postcards that kind of capture a little bit of who we are at EPSG, talks a little bit about our housing initiative, but we need ambassadors. And when the time comes, and I'm expecting that will happen sometime this year, we will have some concrete programs, funding, activities, and events that we will then say to you, we need help. And so we're going to reach out. We don't know where you live, but we're going to find you somehow in the network. And many hands make light work. So thanks for making this time today. And Michael, only the good die young. So you're going to be around for a long time. So
And
we'll build this building before you need it. Thank you.
Well, yes, thank you for that. I only claim to be 18, but whatever. So Larry, any further? I think
I've got
um,
one question of
yes.
Jan's as the last question, and once I'm in the chat room, I can get it for you. And Jan asks, if this were a perfect world, what is the one thing that we need to move this project forward? One thing.
Well, that's a good, I think it could be a couple answers. I would say land. If we had land, that I think we could make almost everything else work. Because as Thea said, it's an address. It sounds real. We know through other sources like CMHC and which goes through banks and all blah blah blah. Those things can be possible, as well as I also believe that other organizations and governments and individuals become willing to contribute or put money into something like that, because it's real and it's going to happen. So I do think that land is probably our most challenging at this point in time, kind of thing. In that, and I do have hope for that, and it does. As Thea was mentioning, there need to be more work at time, and we did start this in 2013, which is what, 8-9 years ago now. Lo and behold, I know both Sherry and I never expected to be around and doing this kind of thing this long. And Sherry, unfortunately, died. I'm still here, kind of thing in that too. So it is not a short process. It takes a fair bit of time and work, kind of thing. And we've learned that, and good work, and that we've managed not too badly. So, are there any other questions anybody has, or any other comments anyone wishes to make? Blair?
Yeah, just to add further to what Michael said, when we looked at gay and lesbian housing, there's way more examples in the United States, in New York City, in South Carolina, San Francisco, Amsterdam. We looked at when they got land. That was the catalyst that moved it along. And I even talked personally to some people who said, once we had the land, then people, not only did the funding start appearing, but people signed up for it, knew it was real. So I agree with Michael, as a land is a catalyst. Also, it's capital. So when you go to CMHC for funding, there's a lot of grant programs, a federal program. When you have land, that serves as capital for getting loans, of course, because we need loans, and also for grants. So
yeah. Good. Thanks for that. Any other questions or comments anybody has they wish to make? And Larry, is that your hand up?
It is my hand up. We're at about 6 minutes to the hour. Let's do, since there's obviously a great deal of interest in the housing, I did want to let everyone know that Blair McKinnon, who is one of our leading people on the this particular aspect of the project, is going to give the Aging with Pride in 2 weeks' time. So think about this, think about some questions that you have for Blair, and he will give you additional details to the summary that Michael has done. And so I urge you to come to that. Are there any other questions or any further comments you need to make, Michael?
Besides thanking folks, I do want to emphasize that we do have a website, Edmonton Pride Seniors, EPSG something.
.ca.
Ron, help me. Oh, there, you put it on there. Yeah, EPSG.ca.
You got it.
Yeah,
I'm
that's one of the other.
We have to thank Ron Byers at the moment, whom I see as a participant here. We're at 5 minutes too, and I think we're at the point where I probably should make some closing remarks. So I will give anyone a chance to say your piece. If not, I'm really going to thank Michael for a stimulating talk and a splendid overview of what we have done. I'd also like to say this is our first effort, and I am most grateful to Kim Loreen for her technical assistance, for helping us with the closed circuit and with American Sign Language. So thank you very much, Kim. And I'd also like to thank Jan Schmidt, Dawn Carter, and Rachel Tassone from SAGE, who are my colleagues on the Aging with Pride Steering Committee. And thank you all. I hope that we will see you again next week when Dawn Carter, a member of this group, and also the executive director of Pride Center of Edmonton, will be our speaker. I'm going to ask you a further favor. We'll send out by email a short evaluation questionnaire. Please fill it out and return it to us. Your opinions really are crucial for planning future programs. May I ask as well that everyone register pre-register for future Aging with Pride events. You can contact us at agingwithpride@pridecenterofedmonton.ca. I know there were some technical glitches at the beginning this morning, but I think we really did pretty well once we got going, considering that that this is our first effort, and that we had quite a sort of raft of registrants at the last minute, and some people who simply called in. So again, please pre-register for that. And I'm now going to return you to our host, whether that is, I guess, is Dawn or Kim. And again, thank you all very much, and I hope to see you next Thursday, the same time, for Dawn Carter's talk.
Thank you so much, Larry. And thank you everyone for coming. This is a wonderful turnout. When we first started talking about this, we sat in a group at SAGE and we're like, maybe 2 people will show up. We didn't expect all of you to come. And this is a wonderful kickoff for us. And this was really great for me because I'm in my early 50s, and housing is something that I've been thinking about, as a member of the queer community. Where am I going to live? Who's going to take care of me? So this is definitely a pertinent concern for me as well. And I can't wait to be a future beneficiary of the very hard work that EPSG is putting into this housing project. It's needed, it's critical, and the Pride Center of Edmonton supports it. So as Larry said, we will be sending out a survey by email, and we will also be sending out information on what sessions are coming up and how to register for them. For now, you can email Kim at agingwithpride@pridecenterofedmonton.ca. And you can also call SAGE as well to register. So on that note, it's at 11:59. So thank you very much for coming, and have a wonderful day. And hopefully I'll see you next week when I talk about the Pride Center. So take care for now, everyone.